You're listening to the Geekly Chronicles.
We are now going
to
speak to Ellen Murray. Hello, Ellen.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. I got it right that time.
Yes.
Ellen.
Just about, yes.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. It's a universal experience. I get emails to all sorts of things these days.
That's still no excuse. I should get your name right.
It is written down in front of you.
Well, and also, you're awesome. For anyone that follows you on Twitter or kind of takes a look at the things that you do, you are such an inspiration to so many people. We are so excited to have you on the show this evening. So first of all, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So tell us and the listeners a bit more about the work that you do.
Sure. So I'm the current chairperson of Gender Jam, which is a trans youth charity in Northern Ireland. So basically what we do is we bring transgender, non-binary young people, people who are questioning their gender together, give them a safe space, give them a place to meet people like themselves, and give them the information they need to sort of get what they need and flourish. We've just opened a beautiful new centre in Belfast. I think it's one of the only ones in the UK, and it's definitely the only one on the island here. That's just for trans people and the folks in their lives, to make them really, to give them a space and give them access to their rights. So I fight on. My job is basically shouting at teachers and shouting at doctors specifically, and fighting young people's corners to make sure that they are getting the rights and the entitlements to the society they live in.
That's just a little bit impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And
more than a little bit.
Well, and as an adult trans person who didn't really have those kinds of things when I was younger, I just think it's amazing. It sounds absolutely wonderful. Can you tell us a bit more about what the biggest challenges facing young trans people in the world today are? I mean, obviously, a lot of trans people will know what these issues are, but I think it's important for everyone to know the issues that these people are facing.
No, absolutely, and certainly the needs of trans people and the things that our communities are calling for are often not terribly well known about. But the biggest ones that I come across day and daily would be young people's safety, the safety for themselves, living in safe housing, living in safe communities, and being able to go outside and take part in society without fear or real risk of being attacked, of being assaulted, of being discriminated against. Because I work in healthcare, young people's access, and trans young people specifically's access to healthcare is very poor across the whole of the UK, and certainly Northern Ireland's not apart from that. Young people struggle enormously to get access to really, really basic healthcare that people who are cisgender people who aren't trans really don't often have to struggle with, and just general stability and recognition in their lives, because coming out as trans, especially as a young person, can completely upend your entire life and flip everything on its head. And that instability when you're 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 22, 23, when you're at these certain really important times in your life, having to deal with everybody treating you like rubbish, or your doctors not believing you, or you not being able to be recognised by society, that's really, really tough. So being recognised and having that stability within society is what the young people I support ask for constantly.
Yeah, and I mean, I do lots of work with young people, not trans-specific work, and with a real mix of trans and cis and assorted different young people. And I mean, I see year on year the positivity and the acceptance among these people improving, which I think comes through education and comes through a real kind of change in the way that people see that openness and acceptance. For me as an adult, when I first started really talking to people about being trans myself, I faced a lot of, as I did that kind of as an adult, a few years younger than I am now, but it was a scary thing. A lot of people with much more outdated attitudes definitely didn't make my life particularly easy. And even now, in some of the areas that I volunteer in, I don't even use the identity that I have kind of full time in the rest of my life, because transitioning is a slow thing, and sometimes you just have to keep yourself safe. So, I mean, from my point of view, I think that it's absolutely wonderful that people are focusing on that more and more at younger ages, which is absolutely amazing.
Yes, absolutely, and we've seen a big shift in the past 2 or 3 years around the support and the support from charities and organisations, but also support from the general public around trans people. And we're starting to see schools start to listen, I suppose, to young people and take them seriously, which is really the first time that that's ever happened. Now, there are new problems starting to come up. The support for young adults, for example, once you hit 25, the support drops off, and we have new problems to start working towards resolving. But certainly the trends that we've seen over the past number of years, including here in Northern Ireland, which is often seen as a conservative backwater, is very, very encouraging.
Good. It's always good to see that positive progress happening. So, I myself am not trans and want to know, what are good things that allies can do, and what are some common things that allies do that they really shouldn't?
Yeah, so there's an explosion recently in terms of the support from people outside the trans community, wanting to lend a hand at helping our communities, and that's fantastic. Some of the good things that allies can do is listen to the voices of trans people and of trans communities, and I suppose amplify those voices. People who are not trans or not dealing with all of the societal baggage that being trans puts in your life often have a lot more capacity to get those issues stage time and airtime, and are often taken sometimes more seriously than the people who are in the community. So amplifying the voices of trans people and reflecting the wishes of trans people in your work. So including the issues of trans people and the specific issues and specific requirements of trans people in the general work that you do. So if you're doing something, if you're supporting young people, or you're running a school, or you're, working in any field, just thinking about how trans people would be affected by the work that you're doing and trying to make it more inclusive, and talking to organisations like ours and others around the country to make sure that what you're doing is right. In terms of the stuff that people do that's often very well intentioned but perhaps misdirected, is taking one trans person and really considering them to be the sort of master trans person that everyone else is sort of stamped from, kind of like a record. And trans people need different things in different situations, and something I come across time and time again in schools is one person comes out and the things that one person requires are then put in place for every single other person, even when they may be exactly the opposite of what those people need. So treating people like individuals is really, really important, and also not boiling everything down to being trans. Often we find that, and certainly often I find that even in my job and doing the work I do, it's really, really disempowering when doctors and civil servants and teachers boil every single issue I have down to me being trans, and it's usually not the case. So taking an individual approach and not boiling everything down to the fact that we're trans is good, but mostly listening to people and listening to the communities is how you be a good ally.
Thank you, that's fantastic advice. Say a trans person is facing abuse or torment or are in a really bad situation, where do they go? What should they do? And if I'm a bystander witnessing it, what should I do?
So it really depends on I suppose the crisis that you're experiencing. In the first instance, if you're having an emergency situation, you should get in touch with emergency services, and that goes without saying. If you are really struggling with ongoing harassment or ongoing torment or abuse, and you're not getting support from the official channels that already exist, get in touch with your local LGBT or local trans organisations and ask them to do their job in advocating for you and getting support in place. Sometimes that abuse and that torment is really, really hard to work around. Maybe you're stuck in a housing situation where that's just inescapable for you. So having peer support and having a place where you can go and feel safe on a regular basis and get support from people who have been there and done that is really, really useful. But getting proper advocacy and proper support from professional people who work with supporting young, ideally other trans people, is some of the most important thing one of the most important things you can do if it's available. If you're a bystander witnessing something, again, it really depends on the type of thing that's happening. But if it's safe to do so, try to step in and stand up for a trans person receiving abuse if that's possible. Backing somebody up and providing statements and evidence if need be, if a trans person does pursue something through the police, for example, and really fighting that person's corner and then advocating for them, because often we find that when trans people go to authorities or go to when they report issues or harassment or crime, they can be taken less seriously because they're trans. So having somebody to stand up for them can be really empowering.
Yeah, and that's a very positive message, I think, for everyone, as we've been talking about tonight, supporting each other and supporting one another. I think that's it's really key. It's core for all of us to do. And we really want everyone to stay safe. That's kind of one of my primary concerns. You know, we are all on the same page here at the Geekly Chronicles. We love people. We want people to be safe. What are the best resources that can help people be as safe as they can? Again,
this really, really depends on your location and how easy you can access physical spaces and how easily you can travel. But getting access to peer support and getting access to a network of friends who will always have your back, who have been there, done that, will be able to advise and will be able to step in if you need things in an instant is really, really useful. Getting support from the organisations who are there to help can really turn around people's lives, and I see that every week. We see people come in massive crisis situations, really unsafe situations, and just getting access to somebody who can guide them really, really starts to turn things around.
Yeah, we're celebrating love, peace and acceptance on tonight's show. Tell us something heartwarming from your world that makes you want to kind of punch the air with joy.
Punching the air with joy. So I was thinking about this, and this is something that happens quite regularly. Thankfully, this sort of area of work is really emotional. It can be really stressful. And when you're constantly trying to sort of beat down the doors of school administrations and doctors' offices who just don't want to listen, it can be really disheartening. But this is something that happens quite regularly. We regularly do sort of health stalls at health fairs, where schools come along and young people will come along in their hundreds. And we usually don't get a terrible number of people coming up for different reasons. But something that happened a few months ago was we were at a health fair, and somebody came along and they were shaking like a leaf. It was very, very obvious. They were terribly, terribly nervous. And they walked past us at the speed of light and just swiped the leaflet from our table. I didn't really think much of it. But a week later, they turned up at our old office and they turned up with their parents. And they came out to their parents in front of us, and they were shaking like a leaf then. And their parents accepted them. Their parents took them on board, and their parents stayed on for a chat with our family support service as well. And now they burst into some of the youth groups that we run with a bunch of other young trans people, basically screaming and shouting and having a fantastic time. And this young person has got their life together now because they had the support in place when they needed it. And it's that and seeing people going from shaking like a leaf and not being able to talk to anybody about it to this being now this integral, really positive part of people's lives, that's one of the things that really does make me sort of get out of bed in the morning and feel really, really good.
That's really wonderful. It's such an amazing story, and it what is heartening for me is that you say that it does happen, now and then, so it's not just a one-off.
And it shows how incredibly valuable the work that you do is, because even if it is just taking the leaflet from your table, that is the spark that starts something in someone and prompts them to get access the services they need and get the support they want. Now, we have people in the chat room who've been listening along and are very, very happy to hear you say what you have said tonight. But Scattermoon says, please mention Bilbo before Ellen goes.
I know I was excited to do this because, Ellen, if people follow you on Twitter, what is one of the things they are most likely to expect from you on a daily basis?
Yes, if I'm Ellen from now on Twitter, because I could not go with a trans joke. But yeah, one of the most prominent, I suppose, forms of highly good content that I put on the internet is photos of my cat, the enormous good boy, who's called Bilbo. I didn't name him, but he's certainly become a very good part of my life, and he tries to suffocate me to sleep every night. So certainly, if you're following me at any part of the internet, you'll regularly and routinely see gratuitous pictures of a very big orange cat.
He's absolutely beautiful. How old is Bilbo?
He's just over 2,
Wow.
but he shows no signs of stopping growing, which is very, very good.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, he's absolutely wonderful. So, Ellen, before we say our goodbyes, how can people get in touch if they want to? How can they follow you, and how can they find kind of information about some of the things you've talked about this evening?
Sure. So there's following me personally is Ellen from now on Twitter. I mostly talk rubbish. I talk disability and trans stuff and cat photos, as I've already said. If people in Northern Ireland want support around being trans or questioning stuff, the website transgenderinI.com is a hub of information for all the support groups here. Genderjam.lgbt is our own website. We've got that nice cool domain name.
Nice.
And for people in outside of Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, there are a number of different trans organisations for different age groups, different areas, and for families. And I would encourage people just to Google stuff in their area. There isn't really a hub yet for GB stuff, but the information is widely accessible online.
Well, there is, of course, the Trans Lifeline in the US as well, translifeline.org, which is, I know, facing an influx of calls this week more than ever, and needs support and donations. So if you're in the US or Canada, you can check that out. Again, a quick Google in your country should hopefully reveal some local services to you. Certainly in the UK here or in Great Britain, if you Google around, you should be able to find some local services near you as well. Now, Ellen, we ask every guest that comes on the show to pick a song that they can request and dedicate to someone or some people before they go. And you have chosen something for this evening, so over to you to introduce that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just sort of closing up the Belfast Trans Centre now, and we had a drop-in earlier on with a load of young people in, and some of the folks who hung on to the end, I asked what they wanted to listen to, or what I should request, sorry. And a lot of maybe trans listeners now will perhaps be rolling their eyes, but there was a clear winner. There were a few suggestions, but there were clear winners. So on behalf of the Gender Jammers from Belfast and Northern Ireland, we request True Trans Soul Rebel by Against Me.
Ellen,
Brilliant.
thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely amazing to talk to you.
Yes, incredibly inspiring.
Thank you.
Not a problem, my pleasure.
And do take care, and we look forward to seeing some more of those cat pictures online.
Yes.
Undoubtedly. Hopefully tonight.
Lovely.
The Gately Chronicles.